back in your lives with yet another episode of the Collegian Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Joey Aliberti, here with the wonderful writers of the UMass hockey beat for the Daily Collegian in Colin, McCarthy, and Kayla, Gregoire. How are you?
Oh, I am so great. Happy to be here.
Doing so amazing.
I was, those were the exact responses I was hoping for. I'm not gonna lie to you. I was hoping for those exact words to come out of your mouth. But let's get to business, okay? Because this is some crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
UMass hosted number one Denver. You two hopped on the podcast, just you two. What was it? A little less than a week ago now, making your predictions. Kayla, I think you said something along the line. Actually, before we get into your predictions, let's talk about what happened. UMass swept the former number one team in the country in Denver at home, 4-2 the first night, 3-0 the second night. Kayla, you predicted that they were going to lose the first game, win the second. Colin predicted that they were going to win the first, lose the second. Colin was looking real smart at first, but then little did he know UMass was going to win another one. What the hell? What the actual hell? How does this happen?
My jaw was open for the entire first period of both Friday and Saturday's games because of the way that they scored so fast and jumped out to those leads. It was an experience. Because like you said, Friday, I thought I was looking really smart. I was like, UMass has a chance if they score fast. And they did, and then they won. And I was like, okay, yeah, that was an incredible win for UMass hockey. And then I went in on Saturday morning, and I was like, they probably won't win tonight, though. Like, Denver's going to come back defending national champions and, probably return fire, punch them back in the mouth, split the series. And that, I thought, was a really good scenario. At the time, I thought it was best-case scenario. They sweep the series against Denver. Saturday was something. Saturday was something else. They scored even faster on Saturday. They had even more momentum. They played even better. The Friday game, I think, was actually a lot closer and a lot more Denver dominant than the Saturday game was, to be honest with you.
No, I'm literally I'm repeating basically the same thing that Colin said. I went into the first game being like, oh, they're still so inexperienced, they're gonna lose this. And then they got the 5-minute major. I was like, oh, they're I'm technically correct. They are gonna lose. And then when everything happened, it was an absolute jaw drop. And the second game, kind of what Colin said, I thought they were going to lose because they had won this first game. They used up all their goals, but then they come back even better. So it's insane.
I'm going to give you two the option of which direction we want to take this to start. Do you want to go into the nitty-gritty of these games, or do we want to save that for later and get into the bigger picture things right now?
Let's do nitty-gritty. Let's do deep dive.
Okay. Well, let's start with the first 40 seconds of the first game. Cal Kifuke gets ejected for what's the penalty called?
It was I think it was an illegal hit of some kind. He just hit him in the back into the boards.
He got hitting from behind and then just a game misconduct.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, in real time, he hit someone into the boards from behind just when the puck was
nowhere near.
Yeah, it was not in that direction, that vicinity at all. Probably just trying to kind of send a little message to not only Denver, but to his own team, we're not afraid of the number one team. That's my assumption. But 5-minute major, and you're just oh, wow, UMass is already on its heels. 5-minute major to the number one team in the country. Nope. Kenny Connors, goal. Scott Morrow, goal. 2 short-handed goals in a 5-minute major against the number one team in the country.
That was unreal to watch. I mean, unreal for them to have that many scoring chances, that many odd man rushes. We know that their penalty kill is really good, right? But that was their first major test of the penalty kill. For them to come out of that 5 minutes up 2-0, it speaks not only to the fact that they are way more capable on offense than we thought they were. It also speaks to how great that penalty kill unit is still going to be this year. They're always one of the best penalty killing teams in Hockey East, if not nationally. And this is clearly no different. They had guys like Koopman and Reed Lebster as forwards playing incredible defensively on the penalty kill. Lebster also, I believe, assisted one of those shorthanded goals. And then like for the freshmen to be stepping up too, like there's so much to unpack even in just that 5-minute sequence that was not what we expected at all. When Cal took that penalty, I was like, this is what happened last year. Matt Kessler took a penalty against Minnesota State. Minnesota State ended up running away with the score after that. I thought the same thing was gonna happen. And obviously I was wrong.
Yeah, like just seeing players that like you wouldn't think would step up in like those 5 minutes did step up with Kenny Connors, and then even like Lyndon Alger, like he was around the boards, like checking guys into the boards. Like I wasn't expecting it at all, and just like seeing that, and even Ryan Sullivan, he was kind of controlling the puck. Like it's kind of crazy to see.
It was very crazy to see, and for someone that doesn't have nearly as much hockey knowledge as the two of you, I was just like, what is going on right now? Why is it like this is not supposed to be happening right now? Not in the slightest. But it did. And I think in general, the first game, especially the second, not entirely the second, mostly the third period where Denver outshot UMass 22-1, which is nuts. But a lot of that time, of course, with Denver with its goalie pulled, where I come up to you the next day and I'm like, that's not normal, right? To have your goalie pulled for like 7 or 8 minutes at a time. And you're like, yeah, no, not really. So whatever, not to get too off topic, but in general, they were heavily outshot in that first game. And then in comparison to the second one, where I think they were still outshot. I don't know the exact numbers, but it was
nearly, much closer.
Yeah.
Much closer.
What changed from Friday night to Saturday night?
I think they just played a more complete game and a better defensive game on Saturday. And also, like you said, the 8 minutes of having a goalie pulled is always going to be tough. That inflated the third period stats for sure. But even before that, Denver dominated the entire 20-minute third period. I don't want to take anything away from that. I think it was just a better defensive game overall. I think that Ryan Ufko in particular played really, really well on Saturday. He always plays well, but he was doing a really good job on Saturday. And the forwards were stepping up even more defensively too. They were just making less defensive mistakes, breaking the puck out a little better. I think all those things culminated in the much closer shot total.
Yeah, the physicality of the game, I think, obviously on Friday, the physicality of the game was there, but Saturday, I think it even went up. Jerry Harding had big hits, Taylor McCarr had big hits, Lyndon Alger had big hits. Everyone was kind of stepping up in that sense.
Scary Jerry.
Scary Jerry.
I think it's funny that even Carve says he's scared of his own player, which makes me laugh coming from such a stoic guy. Also, when he talked about Ryan Ufko, if we're staying on the topics of Carve talking about defenders, just having such a serious face, looking at the media, just being like, yeah, super good, like elite defenseman, even as a sophomore, one of the best in the Hockey East. Maybe see if he can date one of my daughters. And then just like absolutely making all of us there in the press conference crack up. His dry humor is one of one.
Top tier.
Absolutely.
But let's go to the second game now. Focus more on that. And we talked a little bit about the shots and the defense and the physicality being there. And like you two said, it was like, oh, probably, great win for UMass on Friday, but Denver's Denver. They're probably going to do a little better. But Scott Morrow scores within the first 40 seconds of the game, and this game just looked completely different than the first one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think the big thing there was Scotty scoring early, obviously. He was the only person I think who scored 2 goals this weekend, which that also is impressive in itself. 6 different goal scorers for the 7 goals. But Luke played outstanding in net. He played great both nights, obviously, for 45 saves one night and then a shutout the next night. He was like their difference maker all weekend long. And I think that stood out almost even more on Saturday because the defense was playing so well that when Denver earned their shots, they were like really good shots. Like it takes a lot to shut out a team as good as that's bringing back so much offensive firepower. Denver also is a really complete offensive team. They can score with their back end and their forward group, which makes it that much more dangerous. But Luke played lights out on Friday. Friday played lights out again on Saturday. And I think that was probably the key to that win.
I feel like there's not much I can add there. Like Luke I feel like my jaw was dropped every time he was making saves. It wasn't like he was making those easy saves. Like Denver was making those quality shots. So like he was going on his back. He had to stretch out. He was making the saves.
Luke had 73 saves of 75 shots, and on those 2 shots, I think both were in the first game, obviously, but both were when Denver had more men on the ice in comparison to UMass, whether it be, I think one, Denver had a power play and pulled its goalie.
Yeah.
And then another one where it was just a power play, or no, just a pulled goalie, I want to say. So both times, it wasn't even strength. And just seeing how good he is this early on, and you can tell how like surprised Carve even was. He was like, I don't know, we have him, we have Cole Brady, gonna kind of see what we got here. But now it just seems like he's better than what Matt Murray was for UMass last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you're at least based on these 2 games, he's even better. Like you talk about filling big shoes, going from Lindbergh to Murray to Luke, that's big shoes to fill, and he filled them.
And it's
100%.
It's absolutely insane that he was more nervous to do the press conference than actually be in the game.
Yeah, that was a funny tidbit. He literally took such a deep sigh of relief after we were done asking him questions. He's certainly more comfortable between the pipes than he is with a camera on him. But, I mean, if he didn't earn the starting job for a long time, I know that Carve said they're going to split the goalies for the games against Union. But if he hasn't earned that role for a long time, I would be surprised.
Right? Like, Cole Brady had time at Arizona State, and it wasn't like it was anything special that he did. I don't have the exact numbers up, but I think it was like a 92 save percentage and like maybe over 3 goals allowed per game, which isn't like, that's not special. Luke had never been in college hockey before UMass, and to start like this, I feel like I would be astonished if Cole Brady puts up any sort of no like disrespect towards the man, but Luke, like when you have a guy like Luke Pavicic in net, you do not need anybody else.
Yeah, I could not agree more. The way that he played, he can steal games for UMass. It's what they need right now. They can't, like, obviously you want to give Cole a chance, and I think that's what the Union series is going to be, but you're going to ride the hot goalie, and Luke is the hot goalie by a wide margin right now. It's, like, obvious.
Yeah, at least for me, I remember after the Sacred Heart exhibition game, I was like, oh, Cole's gonna start the next game, but I was entirely wrong. And like Luke has just been absolutely insane ever since after the Sacred Heart game or exhibition game.
Okay, let's get into bigger picture things, and I want to start with a question I've been excited to ask my good friend Mr. Colin McCarthy, because this man, for those of you who don't know, has been here since Kayla McCarr helped lead this team to the national championship. Obviously, they lost that year.
He's old.
And he's now here when Taylor McCarr is now a freshman in a completely new era, past the national championship era, seeing all of Bobby Trevino. He's seen it all in terms of recent UMass history with Greg Carvel. I think you were only not here for his first year when they were really bad.
Yeah, I think his first year or first 2 years I wasn't here for. I wasn't here for Kale's freshman season. So I've basically seen every season that UMass hockey has been great. 2018-19 season and on. I've been here for all that.
You've seen it all. Okay. Leading me to ask you this. Where does this weekend rank in terms of impressiveness for this UMass hockey program from everything that you've seen since you've been here?
It's way up there. Obviously, I think it's way up there. I think the closest comparison in terms of the dominance and the shock factor is, I remember in UMass's national championship run, what really started the run was they had a COVID pause for all of UMass athletics. They came off that 2-week break. People thought they were going to look not great. And then they beat Providence 8-0 on like a Tuesday. And then they went in and faced number 1 BC and beat them 3-2 in the same week, like Tuesday and Friday, like a really weird schedule for hockey. COVID was always a weird schedule for hockey. They were playing games on random days. And that was like a pivotal moment for the team in terms of just projecting them towards the playoffs and projecting them towards that national championship. Like, obviously there's big moments. Them beating Denver in the semifinals, which I watched while I was in Worcester waiting in line for chicken tenders.
I remember you telling me that.
Yeah. Actually. Oh, yeah. Throwback to chicken tender night at Worcester. Yeah, so that game was obviously a lot bigger. The national championship stuff was bigger. But momentum-wise, this is one of the biggest weekends I've ever seen in 5 years of UMass hockey.
Okay, can I list also back in that pandemic year, they went on a 7-game winning streak or something, or like 7 I don't know, something where they didn't lose. They might have tied a couple, but where they didn't lose for like 7 or 8 games straight or something like that.
I think it was more like 17.
Was
There were towards the end of the season, they had a 3-month stretch, I think it was after that COVID pause until the national championship. I don't know if they lost, at least not in regulation. I think they tied. They maybe lost to BU one time. I'm trying to remember. It was a long streak. Believe me, they were looking so dominant.
Okay, so it's safe to say this ranks above any regular season thing that you've seen in your time?
I think so. I think it does.
Okay. And where do you think this ranks among? I think they've won 2 Hockey East championships since you've been here. Where does it rank compared to those?
This is more impressive than both of those, I think. The Hockey East championships, the first one was the year they won the national championship. It didn't look like they could possibly be dethroned at that point. Like I said, their momentum was so high. Second one was a little bit in question last year. UConn had an early lead, but UMass did win that. And I think the key thing is they were expected to win both of those. Their first one was against UMass Lowell, who was on like a Cinderella run. Like UMass Lowell knocked off BC and BU in back-to-back games to even get there. And UMass just sort of stomped that out with a 1-0 win, I think it was. UConn was sort of the same deal. They weren't really supposed to get in there, but they did, and then UMass just won. I think that this is for sure more impressive than those because the quality of team that they knocked off was better and because they had to do it twice.
Okay, so that leaves us with the Frozen Four game against Denver. The Frozen Four game against, was it Bemidji,
Lake Superior State, and then Minnesota, Duluth, and St. Cloud was that national championship run.
What a group.
Those 4 games.
So is it in that area? Maybe not to the same degree.
It's in that area. I wouldn't ever put it above those NCAA tournament games just because the postseason is such a different animal, especially when you get into the NCAA tournament. All these teams are very good. Hockey is good about like the top 16 is really, really good for college hockey most of the time. And granted, UMass did make all of those games look incredibly easy, except the Minnesota-Duluth one. Minnesota-Duluth was overtime. The other ones were not even close. I think they outscored their opponents 17-2 in the NCAA tournament in 2021. That was very dominant. That was more dominant than the Denver one. I can't remember who UMass played in the regionals in 2019.
Harvard and Notre Dame,
okay,
who they both beat 4-0.
So that was a bit of a weaker region, but I still would say that the Denver series is a little bit below those, I think.
Okay, so wedged in between the Hockey East and the NCAA tournament stuff,
that's what
is this weekend sweep against Denver. That's very fair. That is very fair. And looking at the team, other than the first 2 lines, which offensively for the Minutemen are all seniors, it's basically all freshmen and sophomores. And obviously with these wins, individual people have surprised the 2 of you, I would assume, a lot. Who of those younger players surprised you the most this weekend in terms of like, I did not know? Obviously, we talked about Luke Pav. He's, I think, atop that list. Or other than him, who of those underclassmen surprised you the most this weekend?
I would say Tyson Dick. I knew that Tyson Dick would be good eventually, but I did not know that like beginning of the season he'd be scoring goals and that he'd be contributing offensively so quickly. You know, he's a smaller guy, and I just was expecting maybe end of season for him to start picking it up.
That's fair. I agree with that. And just to be different and add a different take, even though I do think that's probably the number one answer.
Okay.
I'm going to take your question in a slightly different direction and say I think Matt Koopman surprised the hell out of me. First year at UMass, grad student, so obviously has a lot more college hockey experience. but I thought that was going to be like just a physical presence on the ice. And instead, he dipped his hand in quite a bit. He scored a goal, looked really good offensively, looked very, very good defensively, and was still that physical presence. He was, I think, one of UMass's best two-way players this weekend. So he surprised me a lot.
Josh Nodler and Eric Faith, the first and second line centers. Josh Nodler's a center, right?
Yeah.
Okay. They were both, I feel like, invisible almost, but I don't even know if you want to put that in a bad way because I think their defense was good. Eric Faith and Josh Nodler, I'm pretty sure, are both known for their two-way presence and their kind of defensive ability on the offensive end, or am I far-fetched?
Yeah, no, Eric Faith especially. I think Nodler's a little bit less, but both still two-way players for sure. Nodler's a little bit more offensive. Eric Faith is a little bit more defensive/physical.
Last season, I wasn't here as much, especially early on, but when did Carve finally say, like, we have found our identity? Because he didn't say, like, they have completely found it this weekend, but he said, like, we took a massive step into finding our identity, and, like, we played, like, honestly, he basically said we found our identity.
Yeah.
Last year, I don't know that he ever said it for sure, and I also don't know if they ever did for sure. Like, they had the run at the beginning of the season where they didn't ever look like a superstar team, but somehow I think they went like 12 games without losing in regulation, maybe more than that.
Yeah,
it was like
a
really weird streak where they were going into overtime a ton and either winning in overtime or like tying because of a shootout and splitting those shootouts. But I don't know. I honestly totally forgot your question right now.
You answered it. Just like, when did they?
Oh yeah, no, never.
Okay,
like basically never.
All right.
I don't know if I'm remembering that differently than you.
Yeah, I mean, like, even just like talking about lineups, like I feel like last year, like the lineups were switching up so much, and even just this year, like towards the beginning of the season, like he even said like he liked the lineups a little bit more, and he hasn't really been switching them up. I know those defensive pairings have been switching up a little bit, and like there's a few switches on the lines, but like really, like he seems pretty confident in them.
How does this weekend change your season-long outlook for this team?
Oh, it changes it massively. Massively. I think we all predicted UMass to be a fourth seed in the tournament, losing the first round of the tournament. This makes me believe that I think they have a way better chance of winning at least one NCAA tournament game. It makes me think that there's a chance they could make it back to the Frozen Four. I don't know if I'm still quite ready to say that yet, go that far. I mean, we've seen two really good games. They also tied AIC, but they took the biggest step forward I think you possibly could, and I think they're now the favorite to win Hockey East, which wasn't my same view even a week ago. And I definitely think they're a strong candidate to at least win one NCAA tournament game.
I probably had like the most negative view on them starting. I think I said like I didn't think that they were even gonna be top 3 in Hockey East. I think I said 4 or 5. Like now, I definitely think they have a chance at being top of Hockey East. And I said they were gonna be 4th seed in NCAA. And now I definitely think that they could make it past and even like what Colin said, make it to Frozen Four.
Can we acknowledge how fast this turnaround happened? They tied AIC a week before this Denver series. AIC's a solid team. I think they're ranked. I think they're ranked. They're actually the first team. Others receiving votes. They're receiving 24. And then just to do this like that, have either of you seen a quicker turnaround than this?
Absolutely
in terms of,
not.
No.
And I should also mention that UMass went from 13 last week into the rankings to now 6. Denver went from 1 to 4. Colin and Kayla both think I'm crazy for thinking that UMass should be ranked above Denver because it's so early in the season, and I feel like this proves something. Where I feel like if Denver had developed themselves as the number 1 team in the country this year, and then they lost the weekend sweep, then it's more fair to move them down only a few. But this is early enough where I feel like a type of shift where like UMass is just like 1 above Denver, like move Michigan up to 5, Michigan to 4, UMass to 5, Denver to 6. That's how Joey make these college hockey rankings.
Third person there.
Honestly, yeah, it's certainly worth the debate. I just it just felt too like UMass going 13-4 is what is what really concerned me. Definitely totally valid. They seem like they're a better team than Denver right now, so the logic would be, well, if they seem like they're better and they beat them twice, why wouldn't they be above Denver? I think I said that more knowing how the USCHO does their rankings just historically.
It's fair.
And I just couldn't see them giving up all that. But definitely it was, very close. To put them 6-4 is very close together.
And Denver is still a stacked team, so I think it's hard to kind of count them out so early.
Mm-hmm.
Very fair points. Very fair points. That's all we got for the hockey segment of this wonderful Collegian Sports Podcast. Kayla, thank you, as always. This will do it for the wonderful Collegian Sports Podcast. I am Joey Aliberti, and I hope you all enjoyed. We'll see you next week.